This is actually the second Air 2S. Air 2S, AirPods Pro, MacBook Air, iPad Air, AirTags. I think companies should really come up with some more creative names. I would not call it Air. From all gimbals that I used, this is the heaviest and biggest one. But it's actually good because if you have heavy camera setups, maybe cinema cameras or generally a camera with a heavy lens, then that's a gimbal that you should look into because it can take up to 4.2 kilograms. And you can feel that, like when you take it in your hand, it feels like a tank. It's rock solid. Comes with this nice bag here, so you can easily carry that around. There are also some extras here, which I will probably not use here in this review. And inside it looks like that, so I really like the case from that gimbal. Actually similar to the Weebill S, it has this locking mechanisms here. I noticed when I lock that here, and if I push it a little bit more, you can see it gets loose. It's a pre-production model, so I'm not sure if that will be the same in the final version, but it's at least good that I have this locking mechanism. If it gets loose sometimes, it's not a big issue though. You have to insert that from the back. If you could insert that from the front, that would be better. Yeah. This has a feature where it always locks in the same place when you put it on there, but I don't know where this feature is. Okay, the manual is in Chinese. I don't understand that. Let's just do it however I usually do it. It has an automatic calibration mode, so it uses some AI to like calibrate itself, which is pretty cool because one thing that I hate about gimbals is to having to calibrate them every time. I finally found it. So you go in the gimbal menu, then press to the right, motor, then power, auto tune, and I'm used to always pressing the middle button to confirm a menu point from other devices, but here you have to press to the right and then it does auto tuning. It actually looks quite funny. There are actually lots of other menu points. You can also set different profiles for different cameras. So if you stabilize one camera or if you oh, what's going on now? You can define different profiles with different configurations for different cameras. So if you change cameras, you can simply change the profile and it's directly there. I think that's pretty cool if you use different cameras. I will not use that today, but probably for some people that's a cool functionality. There's also a focus module for it. Like in the menu I can choose iFocus, but I don't have the focus module, so cannot show that to you. Lots of menu points. It seems like you can really set up this gimbal like however you want. It's probably a bit too much to me. I'm not a professional here, but it's good to have that. So that's it already, and now we're pretty much ready to go. Would actually be better to use a Sony on this gimbal because it has better focus tracking. With the X-T4, I must actually say that on a gimbal I found it really hard before to keep his face in focus because I really have to make sure that the focus point is always where his face is. So if I lose him a little bit, already starts hunting focus. So the X-T4 is definitely not the best camera on gimbals, I must say. I'm a handheld shooter, so for me it's not really much of a problem. And this thing is so heavy. I can feel it already in my arm, and I do 100 push-ups a day. So Roma, how do you like the gimbal?
It's not for me.
It's heavy, right?
It's
I think
to use.
this gimbal is really not made for creators like us. This is really for people with heavy camera setups that sometimes need a few more stable shots. Like, you know, when someone shoots with a cinema camera, for example, you want to have a little bit of handshake in there to give this more organic feel, which is nice, but sometimes cinematographers, etc., also want to get more smooth shots where it would be hard to handheld it. I think this is a gimbal for that. This is not a gimbal for creators like us that are on the go and so on. Like, for that, we want to have smaller gimbals. It's okay if the battery time is a bit lower, etc. So we got a few shots with that gimbal now, and definitely does what it should. Like, it stabilizes everything perfectly. Of course, it's not perfect. It's the same as with other gimbals, my experience. Like, sometimes it turns off and maybe you keep it in the wrong angle for a long time. Maybe I do something wrong there, or so, I don't know, but that's like the same experience as I had with the Gimbal S, for example. But I'm really curious about how the object tracking works with that gimbal. To do that, you need to mount a smartphone on top, and then you can track yourself. So let's do that and see how it works. So what's cool is that you can simply connect the smartphone via Bluetooth directly, and it connects in the app, so you can do the object tracking without any additional cables or so. That's great. What I see here right now, here it tells me new firmware is currently available, but when I click on it, nothing happens. I don't know where I can change my firmware here. Just pretty weird, like no matter where I tap. I also tried out all the options here, but nothing of that works really. You can set all these settings that you can usually set in this overly complicated menu here in the smartphone as well, so that definitely makes it easier. But how can I set the firmware? Because I want to show you guys the current firmware, of course, then the tracking will likely work better. I don't know how to do so, so I will just do the tracking now. So for tracking, you go to create a video, then object tracking, would like to access the camera, okay. And now there we have it. That's actually pretty impressive. Don't go too far. No, no, don't do that. Okay. Walk more to the right. Kneel down, please. Yeah, even that tracks pretty good. What I had to do to make proper tracking possible here is that I had to tilt the phone a bit forward, because the phone always tries, or actually backward, because the phone always tried to keep his face in the middle. Lost him now, but that's fine, I did a good job before. Yeah, that's important to know, because if it keeps him in, or his face in the middle of the frame of the smartphone, I have to have the smartphone in another angle than the lens, because otherwise it would look quite weird on the lens. It's something to note here. But there is actually one issue I see with the object tracking, and that's that you can't choose if it should use the front camera of your phone or the back camera, and that basically means that you can't track yourself, what it would be good to. But I can't imagine that MOZA would not come up with a functionality like that in a firmware upgrade, because right now that's firmware 0.6, so it's a beta version, and maybe with version 1 or future version they will add that, hopefully. So otherwise that feature is not necessarily useless, like you can still track subjects while you walk around with that gimbal, but if you want to get tracking shots of yourself, that would obviously suck. It's just not possible if you don't see yourself and you can't mark your own face. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with the object tracking. It's definitely the best object tracking that I've seen so far on a gimbal. As far as I remember, even the Osmo Pocket 1 was not as good as that one here. So we got our shots, and I think it's enough to come to a conclusion here. Not like 100%, I did not test every single functionality. Reason is simply that I realized once again that gimbals are just not my thing. Like even gimbals that I had before, like Gimbal Gimbal S was my last one, didn't use it for nearly 2 years, and that's why I sold it finally. And I don't know, gimbals are just not my thing. Like for example, here, like this is not specific about the MOZA gimbal here. Like actually the gimbal did everything that it should. But here, for example, now I had to adjust all the axes here to calibrate it to my camera. But now when I want to put it together, I have to set that X here back so that that fits inside. And then I can lock that. So now the next time when I would use my camera, I put my camera on again, and then I have to make all the adjustments again. And to be honest, in that time when someone else sets its camera up, I already got all my shots. It's like, it takes like, even if you're pretty experienced with it and it takes you maybe 1 minute or 2, in that time I can already get 10 shots that all look good, and someone else already missed 1 minute of a sunrise or something like that. So that's why, at least for my style of shooting, where I'm more in a run and gun environment, it doesn't really make any sense to use gimbals, especially because the inbuilt stabilization of most cameras today got pretty good already. But that doesn't mean that this is a bad gimbal. So my overall experience with this specific gimbal is that it absolutely does what it should do. Like, it stabilizes perfectly fine. The object tracking was surprisingly good. As mentioned before, it was the best object tracking that I've ever seen, and there are lots of other great features, like for example you get around 20 hours of battery life. Of course I did not test it completely here, but we're at around, I think, 72% or something like that. Like on the smartphone before, it was at 75. We're already shooting for around, I don't know, like
for 4 hours.
4 hours already. Wow. Yeah, wow, we actually shot for 4 hours. It felt a lot shorter. So I can only say that the battery, what they tell here with the 20 hours, will likely fit, and that's pretty good. And already charging was quite quick. Like when I charged it yesterday, it was, I think, a bit more than 2 hours. I did not watch it all the time, of course, but it felt really quick, especially considering that you get 20 hours of battery life out of it. I also like that you have this automatic AI-based calibration that definitely makes calibrating the gimbal a bit easier. I hate that on all the gimbals where you really had to calibrate everything by yourself. I usually messed it up, to be honest, so it's great to have that. So they definitely put some thought in this gimbal. I also like that you can pretty easily lock every axis separately if you want to, even if it was a bit hard to find out for me. That won't be the case for you, because you will have a manual in your language, not like I had here. So I think that that's pretty nice as well, to have full control over it. And generally the menu looks pretty big, like you have lots of options there to set everything up, and I think that's good for the people that this gimbal is targeted to, which is mostly, I think, cinematographers or so on, people that shoot with bigger camera setups. You can make so many adjustments, and these people usually work on sets, and there you have the time to set everything up. So I hope you enjoyed this review, even if I could not review every single aspect of that gimbal. If yes, then please leave me a thumbs up, and also don't forget to hit the subscribe and the bell notifications button for upcoming reviews and videography tutorials. I hope to see you in the next one.